Hello, Katy-Jo here for a quick chat with Mike Fairclough. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
Thank you.
And you are the only teacher in the UK, head teacher should I say, to speak out against the lockdowns and the vaccines and the mask wearing for children.
Yeah.
And with that, you have lost your job and you are at a stage now, I believe, where you are about to take on the system.
Yeah. So
in a legal sense.
That's right. So just to summarise, I'm the only UK head teacher or school principal to have spoken publicly about my concerns regarding lockdowns, masking kids, and the COVID vaccine rollout to children.
Yeah.
It's the latter which was the most controversial and which triggered people the most. It resulted in 3 separate investigations into my conduct as a head teacher. On all 3 occasions, I was independently investigated and cleared of any wrongdoing and told by my employer, East Sussex County Council, that I could continue to voice my opinion. Nonetheless, I was then investigated for the same thing time and time again. Finally, I asked my employer, look, I understand that you have to investigate me if there are complaints about other things, but can we just agree, given that you've said that I have a right to lawful free speech and cleared and so on, that you won't repeat this identical investigation? And they were unable to commit to that. So I put 4 claims into the court, the tribunal court: discrimination, harassment, preventing me from making a protected disclosure, and constructive dismissal. So constructive dismissal is where I've resigned because my position is, it's unbearable anymore to be constantly investigated time and again. And by the way, the third investigation, the third complaint into me came in under PREVENT, which is the government's terrorism policy, and I was also reported to the Department for Education's Counter-Extremism Division, and this is despite working very closely with very, very reputable people who I've been campaigning with, like Molly Kingsley, who's the co-founder of Us for Them, and who've been quoted in Parliament, the UK Parliament, multiple times. Alison Pearson from The Telegraph, who kindly interviewed me on her Planet Normal podcast a couple of months ago, and who's been a campaigner against, she's been asking questions about the COVID vaccine rollout to children from the very beginning. Yeah. And lawyers such as Francis Hoare and my barrister, who's the leading civil liberties barrister in the UK, Paul Diamond, and I'm being represented by the Free Speech Union, who I have to say are brilliant.
Great.
So it was 3 investigations. They were unable to commit to not repeating this, and it's been quite a rocky ride. But we've got 5 days in court in November of this year.
Fantastic. And it's just so wonderful to see that you're not playing a victim here. This has happened to you because you chose to stand up, you chose to speak out, and so rather than just sitting back and being poor old me, you're like, right, how can I turn this into a positive? What can I do?
So the interesting thing is that there are over 20,000 head teachers and school principals in the United Kingdom. And I wasn't alone in my views. No. I was just alone in terms of the fact that I was the only one to publicly air them. Yeah. There were lots of head teacher colleagues who said to me, I totally agree with your stance. And particularly when it came to children being told that they could be vaccinated within their schools against their parents' wishes. Yeah. And, I know secondary heads who were like, I'm not happy about this, but they didn't speak out. And my issue with that is that every education professional has a legal as well as a moral duty to safeguard children against harm. And that was a clear safeguarding breach. Yeah. So, and even if it were, the whole thing with safeguarding is even if it turns out that what you're raising a concern about turns out to be, nothing, you're still protected in law, but as a whistleblower. Not so with this matter, because of course the whole government's kind of pandemic measures and people's responses to it were not like an organic process. So I twigged fairly early on that there was something not quite right, because I was back in 2020 when Boris Johnson first said many of us will lose loved ones, there's this virus coming. We were not told that we were basically told that it could kill indiscriminately. Yeah. So I remember hearing him say that, and I went back to my school and I said to my parents, right, if you want to keep the kids at home until we know what's going on, go ahead. I was the first school in England to unofficially close, right? Yeah. Even though some kids stayed, some didn't. We then opened up a week later to some of our children, and it ended up with 150 kids out of 360 in the school building, and about 30 out of my 60 members of staff. And it's like, oh, wow, what's going on? But very quickly could see nothing was going on. And we were also then told, it was actually Chris Whitty who said, the vast majority of people are at extremely low risk of serious illness from COVID, and children in particular. So that's when I was like, oh great, well, let's just open up as normal. We've got to consider the impact of closing down society on the economy. And, this seemed like a reasonable thing.
And isolating children.
Absolutely.
From their peers.
Yeah, all of that. And now that the evidence is in and the research is in and the peer-reviewed studies and all of that, you can see that we were right to question it. But it was obvious, early on that, okay, so if this isn't going to be a problem for most people, and particularly children, let's just crack on. But it triggered people massively. Now we know, because of things like the Telegraph's lockdown files and the bizarre Pandemic Diaries book by Matt Hancock, but co-authored by brilliant Isabel Oakeshott, that of course there was the psychological nudge unit, which was influencing behaviour. Yeah. There was the counter-disinformation unit, who were monitoring British citizens. So there's the counter-disinformation unit and the rapid response unit were previously directed and eyes on your kind of like foreign adversaries and typical terrorist organizations like ISIS, etc. And they were repurposed to the domestic population and anyone who questioned the government. And a freedom of information request that I made to the Department for Culture, Media and Sport revealed that the CDU had me on their terror watch list for saying things like, children have wonderful immune systems. So you can see that you've got this, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You've then got the intelligence agencies like MI5 and MI6 working in liaison with the CDU, the 77th Brigade, all of these guys, the British military is so a lot was going on underneath, where if people aren't critical thinkers, they would be just going along with it, and also demonizing anyone who is even remotely critical of government policy. So that's the backdrop. But no, I feel, it's kind of you to say that, and I feel like I'm much more myself now, and I've been thinking a lot about, how do we...
You've been through it. It's been horrendous. It's not been an easy ride.
Dark times, and I've taken a hit, livelihood, relationships, reputation, because previously my reputation as a head teacher was excellent. I had national and international media coverage, primary school of the year for the Times, often in Guardian or the Times, the Telegraph, were known for the outdoor learning stuff. I did very controversial things. I would teach the kids to shoot 410 shotguns, air rifles, skin rabbits.
All of that was fine.
Nobody minded at all.
That was
great.
Go for it.
It was just when I specifically questioned in a moderate manner
more than anything,
the vaccinations of children against COVID-19, then I became public enemy number one.
Wow. Okay. But we can support you. People can support you.
Yes.
With your quest.
Yeah.
How can we do that?
Okay, so there's Democracy 3.0 is a website which is hosting the crowdfunder for my legal costs for the court case in November 2024. If anyone would like to contribute to that, that would be fantastic. I think that's the main thing. But I've also said repeatedly that I think the thing that I've learned the most and I've reflected on the most is this idea of us all trying not to self-censor out of fear of reprisals. You know, it might be something about climate or gender ideology or anti-Semitism or, you know, whatever the thing, COVID.
Whatever.
Like, just, if it's lawful free speech, say it. And it's, of course, you will get some hits and some kickback and so on, but we mustn't, as a society, allow our conversational landscape to recede to such an extent that we can say nothing any longer. So that would be my biggest bit of hope for the world, really.
I agree. And you have a Substack as well.
Yes, I do. Yes, Mike Fairclough Substack. I'm actually an author already, so I've written 3 books. I've got a 4th book coming out this year, hopefully with Skyhorse Publishing. Lawrence Fox is doing the afterword. I've got Dr. Peter McCullough doing the foreword, and it's essentially looking at a way to inspire reluctant free speech advocates to enter the free speech quest. So that's coming up. But my writing on Substack kind of covers mainly the sort of COVID angle of things, but is also about this idea of like inspiring others to speak out. So if you'd like to join me on there, that would be fantastic as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike Fairclough.
Thank you.